Begin the current and penultimate daf. And Masechta Chagigah Daf begin 8 lines down at the top of the Amud, where Gemara continues the discussion regarding the trustworthiness of an Amoritz as it relates to klicheres, to earthenware vessels. Shares corresponds to the concept of Cheskel, Tanya, Tam Daf. Preaching number is doing today's daf. Somebody doesn't discuss in today's daf are Einleis and Kivshonis B'Yerushalayim. So forbidden to make kilns in Yerushalayim because the smoke from the ovens would ruin the beauty of the city. So therefore, there was obviously a shortage of earthenware vessels in Yerushalayim. So Neman Amoritz on klicheres, so they went and they made a leniency that because you have to purchase certain earthenware vessels from Amoritz, they trusted them that they're pure. I think Gemara discusses many of these halachas. Shas Regel during the Yom Tov becomes suspended the halachas regarding Amoritz, and everyone is trusted on the Yom Tov. Misha Abba Regel Mavir al Taras Azar. When after the Yom Tov, so they would have to purify all the vessels in the Beis Hamikdash because all the people, including the Meratzim, may have touched the vessels and made it tummy. Shulchan was susceptible to tumah. The Gemara discusses kol kliyetza asal anachas if a wooden vessel that's meant to stay in one place is not susceptible to tumah, and tzipui, a wooden utensil that is plated with metal is considered a metal utensil because of the plating of the metal. The Gemara discusses many distinctions in that halacha. To begin the card Daf Chavav, 8 lines down at the top of the Yomim. The Gemara says Tana, we learned in the Brayse, explaining this that we learned in the Mishnah. We had said that from Modi'im, it's around 15 mil away from Yerushalayim, and inward, meaning towards the area of Yerushalayim, that Amiratzim were trusted on earthenware vessels. So the Brayse qualifies that halachic teaching as follows. Nemanim b'klicheres hadakim. They were trusted regarding small earthenware vessels, where it's not possible to live without them, that you need to have earthenware vessels. And again, in Yerushalayim, they couldn't make it, so they had to trust Amiratzim that would be in the vicinity up until an area of Modi'im. But regarding gasim, regarding large, huge tubs of earthenware, for example, let's say a barrel for wine, then they weren't trusted, only in Yerushalayim, as the Gemara is going to tell us later on. So again, generally we don't trust Amoritz regarding purity. But in Yerushalayim, there's no way that for them to make it, so they have to have from Amiratzim that are importing. So we're only going to let from Modi'im. That's for the Kli Cheres Hadakin, the thin, small ones. For regarding the Gasin, that's not as necessary, so that was only for a smaller area that they trusted, only in Yerushalayim proper, but not from the area of Modi'im. And this was all, like we said, L'Kodesh, for Kodshim, but as this is a third stringency from what we mentioned in the Mishnah, that we said that for the halacha of Chayim v'Kodesh, we said there was 10, 11 things. Then we had in the prior Mishnah before this past one about Chayim v'Truma v'Kodesh, we spoke about 2 stringencies, and this is actually a third one, that regarding Truma, we don't trust him. It's only for Kodshim, and in Kodshim, it's only Klicheres Hadakin, that's from the area of Modi'im. Now, Amr Shlakish, but we have machlekes regarding what's considered klicheres hadakim. What's a small earthenware vessel that we trust from Modi'im and within? So he says, is that it could be carried with one hand. That means it's a small one, and those are considered klicheres hadakim. This is not even if you cannot take it with one hand, as long as it's not a huge barrel, let's say for wine, we will trust him from the area of Modi'im and within. Another machlekes, Amr Shlakish, is Lishon el Rikan. We only said we're going to trust him if it's empty, these small little, let's say, cup of Malay and Lai. But if it's full, then no, then we don't trust the Amoritz regarding the purity of the vessel, because if we consider the mashke as tamei, then we're going to consider it as a keli tamei too. But Rabbi says no, afilu Malayim, even if it's filled up with the Amoritz's own beverage, not kachim, which we consider that as tamei, and v'fila afi karususei l'toichet, even if his head turban, his kerchief, is inside this klicheres, which is also considered as a medrash, we consider as tamei. No, even so, that klicheres we're going to consider as tahar for kachim, from Modi'im and with it. Now, he says, however, Rabbi agrees, the liquid that's inside the klicheres, shein tamim, they're tamei. Now, Baal Titman, don't wonder, which you would wonder, says don't wonder, because all the words of the sages are like this. Shahadei, because he says, I heard by a klicheres, which we mentioned on the previous daf, that's in the floor of the second story, which we said that will protect the liquids that are inside of the pitchers, but it will not protect on the actual metal vessels themselves, which that was like the shita of Bishamai, because you have login moli mashkin, you have a flask full of liquid, of beverage, and login to main to meshiva, the pitcher is going to be considered tamei for 7 days. Yet a mashkin tar, the drink is going to be tar. So you see that you can differentiate. If you have a bottle of soda, you have a bottle of a drink, and you can consider the drink, the beer is going to be tar, but the bottle is going to be tummy for 7 days. So here also you can say the opposite. You can say that yes, that the liquid is going to be tummy, but the vessel is going to be tar. So that's the way the Chacham are, that even though you have one item, one part of it is going to be tummy, one part is going to be tar, but that's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, that even if it's full, even if he has his tummy turban inside of it, those things will be tummy, but the Klichadas, they trusted the Amoritz to consider that as tar from Modi'im within. That's regarding the Klichadas Sadak in the small earthenware vessels. Now, we continue with the next Mishnah, continue on the theme regarding trusting that of an Amoritz as it relates to the Tahara of Kalim, and additionally, another stringency regarding that of Truma over that of Kachim. Says the Mishnah Hagaboyin, that if there's a Jew that's an attendant, a collector for a non-Jewish king, to collect from Jews regarding their head tax, regarding their animal tax, regarding tolls, regarding all different types of taxes. He goes into the Jew's house to take collateral for the taxes that he didn't pay. Or another similar case, regarding a thief that stole an earthenware vessel, that he returned the vessels that he stole. They're trusted to say we didn't touch inside the earthenware vessel, which that's specifically for kachim that we trust them, but not for truma, because as Rashi explains, this whole Mishnah is going on the stringencies that truma has over kachim. And actually, he says we learned explicitly in the Brisa that the Gabonim, they go into a house, they're trusted regarding Taras Chatas, and they're not trusted regarding Taras Truma, which Rashi explains, although often Chatas means Paradumai, here Chatas means Basar Kachim, and not Efer Chatas. So, what we're saying is, this is a stringency number 4, just a moment ago we said that of number 3, regarding Neman B'Kli Cheres Hadakin is only for Kachim, and not for Truma, and the prior Mishnah we had said 2 things, and that was number 3. This is number 4, which is that we trust him only regarding Kachim, not regarding Truma, that he didn't touch. And stringency number 5 is to be Yerushalayim Neman Mal Kodesh. In Yerushalayim, we trust Amoritz regarding the Tara regarding Kachim, not regarding Truma. But B'Shas HaRegel, Afal Truma. On the Yom Tiv, we trust Amoritz even regarding Truma, as the Gemara is going to explain. So that's stringency number 5 of Chumras that Truma has over Kachim. But the Gemara asks on the opening halacha of a Mishnah b'Mini. The Gemara asks from a Mishnah Masechtas Taras. Mishnah says, "Hagaboyin shenichnu sol techabayis." If the collector goes into the house, habayis kuli tummy. The house is entirely tummy. All the vessels in the house, because we presume that the collector was rummaging through everything and he's touching everything, and we consider him as tummy. But we said in the Mishnah that no, they're trusted to say that they didn't touch. Says Gemara Loikash, not difficult. The Mishnah Masechtas Taras is the Ikenechri Ba'adayir. If there's a Gentile with him, so he's not trusted to say we didn't touch, because he's afraid if he's not going to rummage through the whole house that the Gentile is going to say, "What are you doing over here? Why aren't you doing your job?" Our Mishnah is the Ikenechri Ba'adayir. When there's no Gentile with him, he's trusted to say he didn't touch. So now they actually in that Mishnah Masechtas Taras. Mishnah says, if there is a Gentile with him, they're trusted that we didn't go into the room. But they're not trusted to say that we went in but we didn't touch. So you see that when there is a Gentile, that's what we don't trust. But if there's no Gentile, then he could say that he didn't touch. What's the problem when there's a Gentile with him that you don't trust him to say he didn't touch? It says Gemara, 2 different interpretations. One says he has the fear of the Gentile, that maybe that Gentile is going to punish him bodily or monetarily. One says Emes Malchus Alein. He has the fear of the king, because maybe this Gentile is going to go and slander to the king what he did or he didn't do, and therefore that's why he's afraid. So the Gemara says, then what's the difference between these 2 different interpretations? The difference between them is that the Gentile is not a distinguished figure. So he's not afraid of him, but he's still afraid of the king because he might go and slander. That would be the difference between the 2 different opinions. If you hold it's Emes Malchus, then there would be a problem even though he's not Chashiv. If you held it was Emes Nachri, so then it would not be a problem because he's not a Chashiv person. And again, that's when the Nachri is there. He's not trusted to say he didn't rummage. But in our Mishnah, when there's no Nachri, he's trusted to say he didn't rummage. The second case of the Mishnah was Chagigah Daf. So 2 robbers, Zilas, again, they returned it. they're trusted to say that we didn't touch the inside of the vessels. Says the Gemara, but that seems to be contradicted from the Mishnah over the entire. The Mishnah says, regarding the robbers that go into the house, only the area where the Ganab was walking, only that's where the vessels are going to be tamei. But one thing you see, that wherever he did step, you consider as tamei. For sure the vessels that he stole and he gave back, for sure we're going to presume that he made it tamei. I mean, not the whole house, because not rummaging like the tax collector, but wherever he did go, we consider as tamei. But that contradicts our Mishnah. Says he's trusted that even what he took is not tamei. So Rapechet's Mishmei the Ger says the Rava says Kisha Asur Tshuva. Talking when he repented, and that's why he's returning it. So therefore he's not going to lie. And then he's trusted to say he didn't touch the inside, making it tamei, because the klicher is only tamei from the inside. The Ekenavi says a precise reading of the Mishnah indicates this because the Ketani was the Mishnah says that he returned the vessels. No, that's why they're trusted because they're doing tshuva, and we can do tshuva perm, so appropriate, right? So he's doing tshuva, and he did tshuva, so then that's why we trusted him. But Masha Enke, the Mishnah Mesechtes Taurus, is talking about when he didn't do tshuva, he didn't return it, and then you're right. Now we're going to presume that he did make it tamei in the inside, and he won't be trusted. We said in the Mishnah. Stringency number 5 that Truma has over Kachim is that the Yerushalayim Neman La Kodesh. In Yerushalayim, the Ha'aretz is trusted regarding the purity as it relates to Kachim. So, so what does this mean? So, this is a related halacha. We said the Klicheres Adakin. We said that regarding the earthenware vessels that are small, the daily types of utensils, we said that's another stringency that Truma has over Kachim. We said that for Kachim you'll trust from Modi'im and within, which is 15 mil away. But regarding Nemanim al Klicheres Gasim, this is talking about that we're going to trust the Ha'aretz regarding these large earthenware vessels, and for sure the thin ones, which that's what the Bryce in Yerushalmi says, that we trust in regarding the purity of all the vessels, L'Kodesh V'Kodshim in Yerushalayim itself. So, V'Kol Kach Lama, says the Gemara, which Rashi explains the question is being asked on both. That why is it that we're lenient and we trust the Ha'aretz regarding the purity of the Kodshim of these large vessels in Yerushalayim, and so too on the small vessels from Modi'im within? Don't we treat them as tamei? And that's why we're macham by Truma. Why are we being makel by Kodshim? Says the Gemara, because you cannot make kilns, which are these types of ovens in Yerushalayim, to go ahead and fire up and make these earthenware vessels not for dakim and not for gasim. Now, so why are we making a discrepancy that dakim we trust all the way up until Modi'im and gasim only in Yerushalayim? Because, as Rashi explains, the small vessels, people in Yerushalayim, every single person has to purify his libations in his house. So everyone needs small vessels as consumer, individual use. So therefore, they added on a purity for individuals all the way that you could buy klicheres is only that much of how much you allow the supply chain. So going from Modi'im, but people like, let's say, that are in charge of the Lishka of the Beis HaMikdash, who they're the ones that provide the Nesachim of the Tzibur, so for them it's enough for the production that they're going to get from people that are selling in Yerushalayim, and therefore that's only where they trust them regarding the barrels and not further out. Or another interpretation is that every single individual needs dakim, even for the cooking of their shlamim. So be that as it may, it's much more of a bigger demand, so we allowed the supply chain a little further out, all the way to Modi'im. But regarding the gas and large barrels, there's only the people in the Beis HaMikdash, those who provide to the Beis HaMikdash. The manufacturers, they don't need that many, it's not so much of a demand, so therefore the supply chain was allowed only from Yerushalayim.
How would they sell it? They're bringing it from outside Yerushalayim?
Yeah, so it's saying, that's what we said, that as long as he comes in towards within Modi'im, in that area is where we let him sell it. And here also in Yerushalayim, yeah, they're not making Yerushalayim, but they're bringing it into Yerushalayim. As long as you're buying it in Yerushalayim, that's where they said that leniency of buying it from. Yeah, he didn't make it in Yerushalayim.
Does he have to make it from Median and Fnei?
No, because even by the dakim,
it has to be made.
No, we said even later that he's coming.
3 stipulations on the previous.
Right, but that was even if he has to be there, but he's coming from outside of Modi'im as long as he's in that area.
And he has to be the one that made it.
Right, he has to be the one that made it, and you have to be the one that's seen him, and yeah, here it doesn't say if that would be that way. Yeah, interesting that the mission doesn't mention that, but it doesn't have to be made in Modi'im, if I recall. It could be even from outside, as long as he came within Modi'im, That's what he said. Depends if he's coming from outside. That sometimes modim is going to be kilafnim, something kilachutz. Depends where he was coming from. If he was coming from outside modim and now he's in modim, so then we don't. If he's coming from inside modim and he's going outside, depends on where they were heading. That was the previous daf, when sometimes we'll consider it kilafnim, something kilachutz. So that was the difference between klicheres hadakin and klicheres hagasim regarding do we trust in kachim, a leniency, only in Yerushalayim or even up at the Modiyim. Now, the Mishnah said b'shasar egel during Yom Tov afal truma. Even regarding truma, we trust the Amaretz regarding the purity. Says Imam Nonamila, where do we know this from? So Rishon Levi says Damakar based on the pasuk in Sefer Shoftim, which is discusses by the Pelegish Begiva, the concubine of Giva, which caused the whole civil war amongst the Jewish people, that all the Jewish people gathered to fight in Giva. So the pasuk says V'yasav Kolish Yisrael Aliyah, that all the Jewish people gathered to the city, Ke'ishach, like one man, Chaverim, friends. So what do you say? Akasav Asin Kula Chaverim. The pasuk made that when all the Jewish people are together, they're all quote unquote Chaverim. Now Chaver also we use in the sense of that of someone who's scrupulous in the laws of Tahara. So a Yom Tov is a time that all the Jewish people gather, and that's the reason why we considered the Jewish people as even Amaratzim, as Chaverim Kol Yisrael B'nai Maramin, that's on the Yom Tov, they're all gathered together, and therefore they're all considered Chaverim, and even Amaretz we consider scrupulous with laws of Tahara. Now, if you recall, that's why we had this whole parak coming by Kodesh, and starting even the previous parak was all for this point. Because since we're discussing Hilchas Chagigah, which is discussed at Yom Tov, and this is the halacha that B'shas haregel afal truma is the reason why we had this whole sugya of Tumah Ta'ara, because regarding Chagigah, regarding Yom Tov, is when we're going to trust all the Jewish people, even the Maratzim, for their Ta'ara, and that's why we had this whole Hakdama to get to that point of explaining this halacha. Now we continue with the next Mishnah regarding this halacha that we said that we trust even the Maratzim on the Yom Tov, we treat them as a chaver, as someone that's scrupulous in laws of Tahara. So a related halacha is as follows. Says the Mishnah, if someone opens up his barrel on Yom Tov, Cholamayid, he's selling wine, someone starts his dough, he makes a dough and he's selling in the bakery, agavarego. So you have this chaver, this Talmud Chacham, he opened up a new barrel of wine to sell wine Yerushalayim on Yom Tov. Now whoever comes, touches the stuff, Sutam Maratzim are touching. So you have machlekes in the Mishnah, what do you do after Yom Tov? He says that you're allowed to finish selling that barrel of wine after Yom Tov. Now the reason is explained in Masechet Beis Daf Yadav and Beis. There are three things that what's called Hutra Seif Mishim Tchilasim. They permit you to end because of the beginning. Here also that if you're going to tell them, hey, you can't finish selling it because Amaratzim touched it over Yom Tov. Now after Yom Tov, Shain Timah. So he's not going to open up the barrel. Then no one's going to have any good wine to buy. No Cabernets. You're going to find just some of that cheap grape juice type wine. And so because of Hitidu Seif Mission Tulas, they said you could sell it after Yom Tov. You could be going. The Chacham said no, you can't finish after the Yom Tov because even though in Yom Tov we treat it as tar, but it's not really tar. It's that in the Yom Tov we treat everyone like Chaveim, but after Yom Tov, retroactively, Amaretz had touched it. As the next Mishnah is going to tell us, that when the Yom Tov passes, they have to table all the vessels in Azar because all the Manatzim touch them during Yom Tov. What do you mean? Well, all Torah. No, you're not Torah. Over Yom Tov, if it's a smachta, whatever the halach is, but the point is that on Yom Tov we treat them as Chaverim, but after Yom Tov, L'ma'isam, or it's touched it. So the Chacham say, after Yom Tov we can't finish it. He just says, no, he teaches Seif Mishnah Tchilasim, we let you finish it. Now the Gemara discusses this halacha, Yosef Rabbi Ami Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, these two Talmidei Chacham were sitting, Akila Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, on Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, who was one of those two on his porch. And Pasach Havama, one of them opened up and he said like this. He says, what's the halacha? According to the Rabban, they said you cannot finish selling it. It's already tamei, you got to throw out that quarter of the barrel left of the wine. Could you leave it over for the next Yom Tov? You tell me on Yom Tov, you trust him like a chaver, can you save it? So the other one said to him, he said, you tell me, everyone, including Maratzim, are touching it. You're going to say something to the other Yom Tov? What do you mean, Shem Timah? Amalei said to him, and Atar in there, what do you mean? And up until now, all the days of Yom Tov, wasn't everyone touching it until you let it be permitted on the Yom Tov? Maybe you could say for the next Yom Tov too. So Amalei said to him, no, can you compare the two? You understand up until right this point, regarding the impurity of Amaretz on the Yom Tov, the Torah says it's tar. And it came to a situation of Tumah. But now, retroactively, it is tamei, and a chaver is not allowed to sell something that was ever tamei, and therefore you can't wait till the next Yom Tov because it really was tamei. But on Yom Tov it never came to tama, therefore you're allowed to sell it on Yom Tov. Says let's say this question is a machlekes tanoim according to the Rabban, and you could answer the question we had asked to say that's a machlekes tanoim. Can you go ahead and save it for the next Yom Tov? Because it seems to be machlekes tanoim. The one brayse in the chen regular acha that you save it for the next Yom Tov. Trying to either another brayse, lo in the chen regular acha. You don't save it next Yom Tov. My love tanoim, isn't this question exactly machlekes tanoim? This question of that, although you can't sell it after Yom Tov, can you save it next Yom Tov? Machlekes tanoim. Says no. It's not, because our question was only in the Rabbanan. We want to know from the Rabbanan that says you cannot finish it after Yom Tov. Can you save it the next Yom Tov? And we say, you see, it's about like Sanam. He says, no. The one that says that you could leave it over the next Yom Tov, Rabbi Yehuda, who says you could finish after Yom Tov. The one says you cannot leave it the next Yom Tov. There's Rabbanan, who says you cannot. So it's not a Machlekes Tanam in the Rabbanan, it's the Machlekes Tanam we have in the Mishnah. Says him, but is, brother? It's really logical what you're saying? How can you tell me the Bryce that says that you can leave the next Yom Tov, Rabbi Yehuda, who says doesn't become Timah after Yom Tov? Why would you have to leave the next Yom Tov? You're allowed to sell it 2 days after Yom Tov is over. You can finish it. No, it's not Yanechena. So the other says, no, it's still not a Machlekes Tanoim, but it's the opposite of what we just answered. How do you tell me the Bryce that says that you don't leave it over as Rabbi Yehuda? But how do you tell the one says that you do leave it over for the next Yom Tov? Is Rabbanan. So yeah, according to the Rabbanan, you could leave it next Yom Tov, because Ma'asan Yom Tov we consider everyone like Chaverim. And what does Rabbi Yehuda mean when he says that you don't leave it over? I mean, you don't have to leave it over because you could be Yigmar. And the Bryce that says that Yanechena is like the Rabbanan, so they're not necessarily a Machlekes Tanoim. To the contrary, we prove, according to this interpretation, that according to the Rabbanan, you could leave it over, even though you cannot be Goymer it. We don't say it's either started from Mishum Klosim, but say the next Yom Tov, as we had this svar in the past, that then you consider as Chaverim. So good, go ahead and sell it then on the next Yom Tov. Now, continue on this theme regarding Am Haaretz on Yom Tov. So the Mishnah tells us, when the Yom Tov was over, so they would go by, they would remove all the vessels from their place to toivel them, to purify the Azara from the Thomas of Amaratzim that touched them on Yom Tov. Because although the pasuk makes them chavim on Yom Tov, again, it's not because they're be'etz and tar, and therefore after the Yom Tov, l'maisa retroactively, whatever they touched was tamei. So you have to go and now take everything to the mikveh. Now, over a regular Yom Shishi, if let's say Yom Tov was over on Thursday night, that Isra Chag is Friday, then they wouldn't go and do all these tefillim. They covered the Shabbos because the Kahanim were busy. Everyone had to be home, helping out at home. Although there's a Tahav in the base of Migdash over here, the Frau sagt, ich darf help Erev Shabbos. Sister also äußig sein and andere Sachen. That's the same thing over here. Covered Shabbos, he had to help out in the house. He couldn't be purifying the base of Migdash. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if it finished on Wednesday night, if Thursday was Isra Chag, it wouldn't travel until after Sunday. Why? Because the Kahanim were not available. So the Gemara says, Tana within the Braisa, why were they not available? Because the Kahanim were not available on Matzah Yom Tov and Isra Chag on Thursday to toivel it because they were busy because they had to take away all the ashes that were on the mound in the middle of Mizbeach, which gathered all the days of the Yom Tov, which was huge mounds of piles of karbanos of ash that they had. So the whole Danish thing, they were busy taking out all the ashes outside from the Chitz Lamachna, so therefore they weren't available. And then Friday, again, it should be one of those famous Gemaras that Imavatn Talmud Torah shall Tanaikish B'Shabbat to build the Beis Hamikdash. Ein Mitar in the Beis Hamikdash. When you have to help your wife Friday afternoon, you can't be busy with purifying the Beis Hamikdash. You have to be home. A person like what?
They did avoid it with the camera.
Yeah, I feel him at Timma. I feel it. Look. Timma hitche b'the tzibur, but I'm saying that's how wichtig it is helping out your wife on Erev Shabbos that they wouldn't purify the kalim in the Beis Hamikdash because he had to help out in the house. So continue with the next Mishnah, continuing the same theme, explaining our previous Mishnah. How they go and move out all the vessels to purify the Azara after Yom Tov. So my feeling is because they were toiling all the vessels that were in the Beis Hamikdash. But, says the Mishnah Ba'im, the Kahanim would tell the Kahanim Amaratzim on the Yom Tov, because all the Kahanim were coming from all the Kahanim, and there were some Amaratzim, they would tell them, look, be careful as you continue them in the base. Shaytiku b'shulchan. Make sure you don't touch the shulchan, because they can't take it and out the table after the Yom Tov because you can't remove it from its place. Because the pasuk says lechem panam lefanei tamid. The lechem panam has to be constantly there at all times, 24/7, which Taisa discusses when do we say that, when do we not say that, but it has to always be there. So we tell them, look, do me a favor, don't touch it because we're stuck then, because we have to leave it there and we can't table it. And all the other vessels, okay, we'll table. But here we can't, because it has to stay there. Now more, but says the Mishnah, all the vessels that were in the base of Mikdash, they had a secondary and tertiary, they had, like, in other words, replacements for those kelim. Because the first one to become tummy, they bring the secondaries in place of them, like we see this is what they did after the Yom Tov, that they would exchange it and table the other one in its place. Now, all the vessels in the base of Mikdash, tune and tefillah, they all require tefillah because of the tumah of the Yom Tov and the Amdaratzim. Except for the golden altar which is inside the Heichel and the copper one which is in the Azara. Nishin Kakarka de Rebeleza. Les says that the pasuk calls them Mizbeach Adama Pasali. You should make a Mizbeach of earth. Now, since it's like Karka obviously cannot be Makabatuma, so therefore they don't have to be tabled. And the Shulchan we said that they didn't touch. So those three didn't have to be tabled, that's according to Rebeleza. They say because it's plated with gold and copper. Therefore, Chagigah is going to explain what are they saying. Is that a reason to make it tummy, to make it tar? What are they saying? But it sounds like because it's plated, therefore that's why they held that it doesn't have to be, it didn't have to require tefillah. Now, similarly, Tanur Nabraisa adds on to what our Mishnah did not say, is that Hizaru, they would tell the Amaratzim that Shematigu b'shulchan uvemunayr, that to be careful that don't touch the table and the menorah. Says my time, why didn't Atana Bar Mishnah say that they told the Amaratzim be careful, don't touch the menorah? So the Gemara, because Shulchan said Beitamid. The Shulchan says constantly has to be there. We can't move it, so make sure you don't touch it. Menorah, like said Beitamid. Menorah doesn't say Tamid. Now Rashi explains, actually does say Tamid by the menorah, but says Rashi, that's not the Tamid of Yom V'Layla. That's just a Tamid from night to night. Like when we say by the Oilas Tamid and the Chavita Kohen Gadol, the Kohen's not bringing his Chavita 24/7. It just means constantly every single day. But the menorah didn't light during the daytime because it says Me'erev ad Boker. You have to put in the amount of oil that can light from the evening until the morning. So therefore, the entire daytime you could remove the menorah and table it, but the Talmud that says by the Shulchan that it has to be constantly day and night, every single moment from Shabbos to Shabbos, the lechem upon is on it. So therefore, the Talmud Mishnah did not say menorah, only said the Shulchan. What is the time of the Brisa hold? No, since the pasuk says the menorah was opposite the shulchan, so as long as the shulchan's there, the menorah has to be opposite it. So command it's like as if it says the word tamid, but the menorah too. Therefore, that Tana said that no, you have to warn them also not to touch the menorah. The idach, what's the Tana of our Mishnah? He would say no, ahulik v'olik lo makom hudasa. That was only coming to establish the place that we're supposed to put it. Should be noichal shulchan. It doesn't have to have the constancy that the shulchan has. That's the machlekes between the Tana of our Mishnah and the Brisa. If they had to warn them regarding the menorah, if they can move the menorah during the daytime or not. Now the Gemara asks the following question: typically, that you're telling me that they would warn them not to touch the shulchan because we can't move the shulchan, we can't go and table in the mikveh. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? It should be sufficient even if the Amaratzim touched the shulchan, it wouldn't make it tummy anyway. Why do you have to warn them? Why wouldn't it become tummy? Because this is what's called the kli'etza asla nachasu. A wooden vessel that's meant to be stationary in one place. The halach is v'chol kli'etza asla nachas lemitame. A wooden vessel that's meant to stay stationary does not become tummy. My time, what's the reason? Because dumid the sakbin has to be similar to a sackcloth. In regards to the laws of Tumah, the Torah compares a wooden vessel to a sack. Like it says in Pasuk Yikrid Aleph, it says, Kol asher yipol lav mehem b'moisam yitma, whatever falls from these dead shratzim in them is going to become tummy. Michol kli eitz, oy beged, oy oil, oy sack. So in the same passage that says sack, it says kli eitz. What's it coming to compare? Mas sack metaltem olabedekum, just like a sackcloth, is something that's movable when it's full and empty. That's the whole point. That you have the sack, you have that big sack over your shoulder, and you're dragging all your stuff, all your belongings, all your food. So it's meant to be carried full and empty. I've called metaltem olabedekum. So to all those things in the pasuk, including the wooden vessel, is only tameh if it's moved when it's full and when it's empty. That excludes what's a kliyetz asla nachas that's meant to be stationary, that it cannot be moved when it's full and empty. So a wooden vessel that contains 40 sa of liquid, which is 2 kur when it's solid, which you could have a little bit more, even though it can be moved when it's empty, it cannot be moved when it's full, because if you're going to move it when it's full, it's going to break. So that's why it's meant to stay stationary, so it doesn't break. So the shulchan was a kliyetz asla nachas. So why do you tell me I have to warn him not to touch it? Who cares? Let him touch it. It's not going to become tummy anyway. It says, no, hi nami, the shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash was metalti molav. It was actually moved. It wasn't stationary. It wasn't stationary. When did they move it? When would they move it? It has to be lefanei tamid. No, it was moved kedei Rish Lakish, and it was moved with full also with the lechem on it. Because it says Ma'adik, so it was in the pasuk miyikro that says that you should put these 2 orders of the showbreads, 6 on each one, and it says you should put al shulchan ator, on the pure shulchan. So Hashem saying you should make sure it's pure. Well, machlal shur tamid. Then it says that it could become tamid. V'mai, how could it become tamid? It's a wooden vessel. It's meant to be stationary. Not even susceptible to tamid. Rather, said Rish Lakish, Malamish Migbino, he says, teaches that they would lift it up. They would show the the showbreads. They would say to them, wow, Ruchi Basim, look how dear you are in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Silukai Kisi Dudai. The way it's removed is how it was organized, which Rashi says that it was removed on the following Shabbos as hot as the day that it was made. Taisa says that it didn't get hard, and it was still soft, it was fresh. But be that as it may, Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says, Nes Godol Nasav Lechem Upon was a great miracle that happened by the showbreads. It was removed as it was organized. Like the pasuk Shmuel Aleph. Losam lechem, to put the bread, hot on the day that it's taken, that it should be warm on the day that it's taken from the shulchan. So therefore, it's not a kliyetz asla nachas, because it was moved mali b'reikum. And that's why it says shulchan ator, make sure it's tar, because it could become tamei. Oh, so therefore we have to warn him not to touch the shulchan, because if we touch it, it would become tamei. But the Gemara has another question. This time it's asking on the question. But typically, says the Gemara, wait a second, what was your question? You were saying, it's a kliyetz asla nachas. It's not makabel tamei. Why do you have to warn him? So the Gemara is asking on the questioner. It should be sufficient that it is makabel tamei, even if it is asla nachas. Even if they didn't pick it up, they didn't show the miracle, they kept it down, they never moved the shulchan. What was your question? That it should not be makabel tamei because asla nachas, but it should be sufficient that it is makabel tamei, even if they didn't move it mishum tzipui, because the vessels were plated with gold, and a metal vessel is not compared to a sackcloth, because we learn the Mishnah Masechtas Kelim that we go based on the plating, and that's what qualifies it. And the Mishnah says hashulchan, a table, v'hadul faki, which is a type of a folded shiur which is covered with leather. If shenifchasu, if it became deficient, or they plated it with marble. Now, marble is what's called kli avanim, is a stoneware. Stoneware is not makabel tumah. So if it became deficient, or you cover it with marble, but b'shaybehem, the remains, at least from the part that got ruined, or from the part that's plated, at least enough of mokam anachas places, enough place that you could put cups on that table, or that dulfaki, then tamei, because it's still fit for its original work, for used as a table, and it's a regular wooden table or whatever it is that could be makabel tamei, even though the part that's plated with marble would make it not tamei. But if it wasn't all covered with marble, so that it's still considered a shulchan that can be makabel tamei. Yudam, he says, no, you need to also have to have makam anachas hachatiches. It's not enough just to have a place where you could put your cups. You have to also have room on the table where to put your meat and your bread. Okay, but if not, it wouldn't be considered as a shulchan anymore. So you see that the plating is mavatal the shulchan, even as a leniency, that it's not going to be makabel tumah, because we're considering it as marble and not as a wooden table anymore. Now, for sure, we would say therefore as a stringency, because it's always more machman than more makel, and that we would consider the vessel as what you're plating it with. Now, if that's the case, so then we should consider the shulchan as metal. Now, a metal is not compared to a sack. So why do you ask me to klei to asla nachas? Who cares about asla nachas? But it's a metal vessel. It's not considered a wooden vessel, and metal is makabel tumah, even though it's not metaltim moli v'reikim. So what was your havamina that you were asking? Says Gemara v'chitim. If you're going to say, oh, shani atzim shitim, you have to remember the shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash was made out of cedar wood. The chashivi, that's significant, but batli. That's not nullified to the plating. You're plating it with something, that's not going to make it ois this shulchan and make it into a metal. Therefore, we were asking, it is a kliyat zazanachas. Says he, wait, that's not so simple. That would make sense according to Rish Lakish, the Amma that he says, Loisha, we didn't learn this halacha mission Masechtas Kelim that the plating is mavatal what's underneath, el beklei asilgim, which is a type that's not so significant. Habam and Israel that comes from overseas, that cheap stuff that we import. That's what we're talking about. That's going to be mavatal. Habeklei mismim loy batli, but those chashva utensils that's made out of high quality wood, that's not going to be batal. Okay, Shabbat, that would make sense. So you'd say that Atzi Shit in the Beis Hamikdash was the same thing. It wasn't batal to the metal that you played it with, and therefore, although there was gold that was around, but it was made out of wood, and that's what we can consider it. Therefore, we're asking klei tzas anachas. But Rabbi Yochanan, that he says that beklei mismim nami batli. Rabbi Yochanan says that even if it's the chashva wood, it's going to be batal. Michael, remember what are you going to say? Again, it should be considered as metal wear. And therefore, why were you asking asla nachas? Metal is makabel tama even asla nachas. Mechitim, you're going to say no. I'll explain what my question was. Kan the mesechtes kelim is betzipo oimed. We're talking about where the plating is permanent. Kan in the shulchan is betzipo she'ena oimed, where it wasn't nailed in very well. And therefore, you're going to say in the Beis Hamikdash, since it wasn't oimed, so therefore, it's not really considered like intrinsic to the table itself. You could remove that glass covering, it's not really part of the table itself. So therefore, although it's covered with gold, but it's not going to make it like metal. But the problem is, this was exactly a question that Rish Lakish had asked Rabbi Yochanan regarding that Mishnah Masechtas Kelim. He asked him, "B'tzipo oimid? Is it only this halacha that we're going to consider the table as secondary to the plating only when it's permanent, like you nailed it in? Or maybe it's even the plating that's not so permanent?" And he asked him another question, is this only when it's also covering the edges? Is even if it's not covering the rim of the table all around, is that plating have to go like all the way around? Or even if it's not covering the edges? And normally, Rabbi Yochanan said to him, it doesn't make a difference if the plating is hammered in or it's just not hammered in. It doesn't make a difference if it's covering the rim or it doesn't cover the rim. Either way, the plating becomes primary and it's going to become marbleware, and therefore it's not going to be makabel tumah. So we're saying there's a leniency, but we're going to say there's a stringency, and therefore it's going to be like metal. So what would you question? The kli tzom is hasla nachas. Who cares hasla nachas? It's not kli eitz. The covering is gold, is going to be mavatal to make it into a metal vessel. So what was your question? Says rather I'll answer your shani shulchan. The shulchan is different as we continue to Chazanim and Aleph, because the Rachmana Kari Eitz, the Torah calls it wood, even though we know that it's plated, and therefore we that was my question, says the Gemara Kliyetz Aslanachas. Why do we have to warn not to touch the shulchan? It's not makabel tumah because it's not moved anyway. And then we had to answer that it is moved, because even though it is plated and generally halacha would qualify it as metal, the Torah is already telling you that it's considered as wood, because it's in the pasuk in Yechezkel. It says the Mizbeach 8, the altar was wood, Shalosh Amas Gavoya, 3 Amas height, Va'arkoy Shteim Amas, its length was 2 Amas, U'mikza'esav loy Va'arkoy V'kidoisav 8, and its corners for it, and its length by its walls was made out of wood. V'dabalai, and they spoke to me, Zeh HaShulchan HaShalaf Hashem, this is the table that's in front of Hashem. So you see, it's referring to the Shulchan, and the Torah is calling it 8. Therefore we treat it in halacha like 8. But the Gemara has a question. If you notice, Pasach b'Mizbeach, it opened up saying they were talking about the altar, the Mizbeach, and beside the Shulchan, they finished with the Shulchan. So which one is it? So Rabbi Shloimy, they both said as follows. It's teaching you a negadic teaching. This mancha Beis Hamikdash came when the Beis Hamikdash was around Mizbeach Mechap Alodim. The altar would atone for a person by bringing his korbanos. Achshav now, there's a well-known concept that we tell kids all the time when we don't want them to climb on our furniture. Shulchanai shel adam mechap alav. The table of a person atones for him. The shulchan is like the mizbeach. What's the reason? So Rashi says, because of achnasas orchim. Because when a person is eating, he invites guests, like Taisa brings gadol koyach the gima, like we bring in the Gemara and Sanhedrin, that it's how great it is when you give someone to eat. It's mamish mechaper on a person's averis, just like the Mizbech, and that's why, but Al Kapanim is referring to the Shulchan, and it's calling it 8. So you see that the Shulchan is called 8, and therefore we had that whole discussion to say that it should be Klei Tzal Nachas, and there's not Kabbalah, which we said it's not meant to be Nachas because it is Metaltel Molder, where they can bang it to any time for hosting us.